I have a huge problem with my 2005 BMW M3. It's the rear view mirror. You see this line here and how it's darker on the bottom half and lighter on the top half? It's extremely distracting. BMW wants $700 for this part, but I think I have a solution that I can fix it for about $80. So I was looking online and I found this on Amazon, and it's a mirror glass, and it's a replacement glass for this. This is basically two pieces of glass sandwiched together, and then it's clamped with this metal bar here. The metal is actually what provides the electric to the liquid that's inside of it. So let's go ahead and take the original mirror apart and see if we can get this fixed. Hopefully there's not an electronic issue with this mirror. All right, so as the mirror sits here, you can see that the liquid is slowly migrating to another area. And when you see this happening, it's really important to get it done quickly because they can leak out of the mirror. And I've seen these where the bottom of the mirror is very delaminated and gross, and then it'll drip from the bottom of the mirror, land onto your center console or your shifter area, and it'll ruin that as well. So it's a good idea to get this replaced just so you don't damage other parts of the car. I'm going to separate the two halves so we can get the glass out, and just be careful not to damage the plastic here. Whoop. Some of these plastic tabs did break, which is awesome. We'll fix that later. Okay, we're going to unplug this connector. Set that aside. And now we're going to separate this, but we got to unsolder it from here and here. All right, so right here is your photocell sensor. This is what actually sees the light that's coming in behind you, sends a signal to this board, and then this board, well, there's a ground here and a positive here, and you can see how it's soldered to the edges. So we're going to have to unsolder these, remove the board, and then place it on the new glass. And the way they make this glass is they have the two pieces, they inject this fluid inside of it. And you can see where they sealed right here. That's where they inject it and then they seal it. Well, it looks like that might have been the failure point, because if you look on the edges right here, I don't know if you can see that or if it's, this right here looks like it failed. So now it's allowing air to get in and it's no longer sealed, and that's why you get this. I decided to go ahead and put a glove on just in case this glass breaks, because I'm prying the back of it off and I don't want the glass to shatter in my hand. Although I believe, it looks like I can unclip this from the backing, which looks a little bit more safe. Then we can take the backing off. Oh yeah, should have done that. There we go. So now I want to make sure it stays in the right position. That is facing up. So we're going to leave that like that. Now let's go ahead and pry this backing off. And then we'll need double-sided sticky tape to stick it to the new one. Okay. All right, so this mirror, on the circuit board, there's an EC plus and an EC negative. So plus being positive, negative, being negative. And it was wired in where this was the positive and that was the negative. Well, it's not labeled, and on the new mirror there's a plus here and a negative here. So I'm assuming, and hopefully we're right, this is the plus and this is the negative. So I'm going to keep the mirror glass in the same orientation. So this should go on here like that, but I'm going to replace the sticky with new. Okay, just because I'm curious of how things work, we're going to take this apart at the end of the video and just see how it's made. So we'll put this aside for now, but at the end of the video, we'll take that apart. That'll be interesting. All right, so I'm I got some 3M double-sided tape. Just kind of measure it here. I'll cut it with my knife. I want to put some pressure on it, but not too much because it is glass. All right, snap this little guy back in. So now we get to do the fun part and solder those back on. Okay, so I might have made a mistake. Not that big of a deal, I hope. So we're in the middle of transitioning into working out of my garage in my house, which is where we are right now, instead of the shop. Those of you who've been following along, I usually do all my work at my garage, which is a business that I have. So I have every tool at my disposal all the time. One thing I don't have, I just realized, is solder. It's at the shop. But that's okay. I think I've got a solution. So these wires that we desoldered or unsoldered have some solder on them already. So I might be able just to heat it up and it'll solder back, but we can also kind of steal the solder off the old glass and transfer it onto the new one. It might be a little tricky, but we'll give it a shot. I wonder if I can peel that off. Oh yeah, look at that. We're disassembling this a little sooner than I wanted. So we're gonna find the solder piece that's on here, right there. All right, let's try this. Let's heat it up and try to get the solder on the soldering iron. All right, let's see if this will just... Oh, it's hot. Imagine that. It's not working out too great. It's like a balancing act. What happens is the solder melts, but you got to give it time to harden. So you got to hold it in place without the soldering iron there, let it cool down. Hopefully it sticks. Nope. Let's try this again with this other one. There's got to be a better way to do this. I just never run into this situation before. All right, so I did transfer over some solder. Let's see if it worked. Oh, it was not very successful. I might just have to go get the solder. Okay, we're gonna go get some solder. So we're fighting the sun coming down. We wanna make sure that the video stays consistent. So we have a very short window. We're gonna run to TSC real quick, which is pretty close to the house, and see if they have any solder. Hi, how are you? Good. So the price of the solder was $20, and then the double-sided tape that we bought was like $22. You add that plus the mirror was $80. So now you're up to $120-ish.
You really can't add the full price of the solder or the tape because you're going to use that for other projects. So, you know, you're only using a fraction of that.
Right, okay, so a fraction of the solder, a fraction of the tape, so maybe add a couple bucks to the total cost of the repair. So now we're up to 80 to 83 bucks. That's still pretty good. All right, we're back from TSC. I've got the solder. I decided to use my vise to hold my clamp and the clamp to hold the mirror, just so it's more steady and I can solder and do all this while it kind of holds it all in place. I just had to work with what I got, right? Okay, and actually, oh, look at that. All right, cool. So we're gonna use the solder to kind of hang this down. I've already got the iron on. We're gonna hold that into place and then use this. The solder needs to melt into the wire, and it needs to melt into that metal strip also. So when it dries, they're stuck together. It's creating one piece. But this solder gun is keeping it a liquid. So I'm gonna pull it away so it'll dry, hold itself in place just like that. Oh yeah, that's nice. I like the way that turned out. Cool. So we're gonna flip this bad boy over and do the other side. Okay, I think we're good. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and put it back together. The one thing to keep in mind is this photocell sensor has to fit right into that little hole there. So I gotta make sure that that's in there well, otherwise it won't work. There's a lot going on in this mirror. In fact, it has a really cool feature when you put the car in reverse, even with the manual transmission, you put the car in reverse and the electrochromatic feature actually is disabled, because it assumes that you want to be able to use your rearview mirror when you're backing up. Let's go ahead and put the clown nose on, like that. Nice. Now we have a mirror. Before we put it in the car and see if it works, let's go ahead and disassemble this. I want to see what this looks like. Let me use my knife. Oh, there we go. That was it. Watch this. This is cool. Make sure I don't stab myself. Oh, that is so cool. All right, there it is. So the way they assemble this, so this right here is the actual mirror, the back part of it. This is just clear glass. They put they set these together. They inject that fluid in there, and that fluid is transparent when it's not electrified. As soon as the sensor sees the light, it electrifies the fluid, and the fluid becomes dark, and it reduces the glare. And when it fails, this is what it looks like. All right, let's get this mirror back in the car. Let's see if it works. This mirror has actually two sensors. There's a front sensor, technically a rear sensor, and a front sensor. The front sensor, when it's mounted into the car, it is looking out the front, and it wants to make sure, it's not a camera, it's just a light sensor. So it knows if it's daylight or if it's dark. If it's daylight, it deactivates this sensor. This sensor doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're shining light into it or not. It's just a regular mirror. But if this senses that it's dark or if it's getting dark outside, then it activates this light. This light sensor, when it sees light, it'll dim the mirror. And I believe the brighter this light, the dimmer it gets, which is pretty interesting. So when we get it in, we'll demonstrate that. And it is very important at this stage. I'm basically lining it up. I've seen people push really hard to try to snap this into place, and then they break the windshield. That's never good. Just like that. All right, and then I'll put my covers on later. Oh man, that looks so much better now. I can actually see out the back. Okay, cool. So let's try this out. Let's make sure it works. Key's got to be on. Oh, it's dimming. Success! Success, it works, it's dimming. Okay, so it's actually dimmed right now. If I put my thumb over here, indicating that there's no light being shined from the back. Ah, see? It's not that dark. If I take this away, you'll see the mirror dim down. There it goes. Now, go ahead and shine the light. My dad's gonna shine the light in the front, which will indicate that it's daylight, and then this should not be dimmed anymore. Ah, there it goes, see? We're no longer dimmed, so that is how it works. That's one way to test it too. Like if you wanna know if your mirror is working, that's how you test it. So I hope that helps. Speaking of reverse, another cool feature is when you put it in reverse, the passenger side mirror will tilt down because it also assumes you're backing up and you wanna be able to see the curb or something like that. So watch, I'm gonna put it in reverse, and the passenger mirror tilts down. Now we've actually had some customers complain that that's not working, and the reason is because this switch, the mirror switch itself, if you don't want that feature on, you can turn it off just by selecting the passenger side like that. So it's still in reverse, but now it's going back to its normal standard. So if I go into reverse, it's no longer gonna work because of that switch. So sometimes customers will switch that out and they'll just think, hey, my tilt mirror isn't working anymore. Well, flip it over to the driver's side selection, and then the passenger side will tilt. BMW thinks of everything.